I think I like to come to Poland because Poland has had such an influence on culture in the United States. And whenever you go to like the cities of Chicago, it seems like it's half Polish. And over the years, as a kid and everything, I met so many Polish people that I was impressed with. I remember the first time I always wanted to go to Poland. And when I got here, I found out the people here were as great as the people back in Chicago. And I like Poland. I like most of the Polish people. No one is truly an expert about youth. You can have researched opinions. That's what my opinions come from. About 50 years now. It's my 50th year working with young people. And I would say in the world, if I had to clarify it with one or two words, I would say hurt and abandon. Not so much abandon from divorce, but more from an emotional detachment. In every culture, not only Central Europe, United States, but Africa, the Muslim world, the same thing with young people. And you see this when you watch the internet, see things that stream in the internet and the questions they ask and everything. So I think for the most part, many of them have lost a vision for making the world better and different because they don't think it's possible. And then second, their emotions are overriding their convictions. That's very easy. Get their parents to fall in love with Jesus. When you have a child, say in the church, that grows up with a mom and dad who love each other, love the child and love Christ, and they live their faith out, that child will almost always follow the faith of their parents because they want what they see. But you know, it doesn't matter a lot of what you do with youth if you don't work with the parents, because youth reflects the parents. And I would say the number one problem in the whole world when it comes to young people are the parents. I was asked by former President Bush of the United States, what is the greatest problem in America? And he, listed out Iraq, Afghanistan, drugs, violence, alcohol, the economy, what? And I said, sir, none of that. He said, what is? I said, the greatest evil in America is the absent or non-involved daddy, period. That's the number one problem. Every kid in the world wants a daddy. They want a daddy who loves their mother and loves them and manifests Christ. See, one of your problems today is that the way truth has shifted in culture, to a young person, well, to an adult, if it's true, it will work. That's not true of a young person in most cultures around the world. For a young person right here in Poland, if it works, it is true. And you can talk to a young person all you want about faith, but if they don't see it in their mom and dad who proclaim to be Christians, then they'll say it's not true. Why? Doesn't work. See, that wasn't true 25, 30 years ago, but now it is in culture. So you want to help young people? Help parents to fall in love with each other, to fall in love with Christ, and build a relationship with their kids. After that, kids will listen. I spent 5 hours yesterday speaking on that. Again, when it comes to whether it's sexuality, violence, drugs, alcohol, non-performing students, whatever, it comes down to this one phrase: rules without relationships leads to rebellion. Kids don't respond to rules. They respond to rules in the context of a loving, intimate relationship of their mom and dad. And the best way to ever help a child to want to say no to promiscuous sex and yes to waiting until that right time in marriage is to have a mom and dad who truly loves each other, and their children know. This is where most parents fail. They don't want their kids to know this, but where their children know, my mom and dad love sex. They have a great sex life. You say, that's awful to let a child know that. Look, with my 3 daughters and my son, the greatest heritage I left them for sexual purity was they so wanted what I had with their mother, they were willing to wait. And that's the key. It's the key biblically, socially, intellectually, everything. And so it's important to know all the pros and the cons and the pregnancy and STDs and everything. But all that doesn't do a whole lot of good if you don't work with the parents to create those relationships. Truth about sexuality without relationships leads to rejection. I would say love is basically defined in the Bible with nurture and cherish. Nurture means to provide nutrients for growth. To cherish means to protect. And so I would basically define love as protect and provide. If you truly love someone, then you will provide nutrients for spiritual growth, physical growth, relational growth, spiritual growth. Then if you truly love that person, you would cherish or protect them from anything that will hinder that nurturing process. And this is best described in the Bible. It's not defined in 1 Corinthians 13 like most people think it is. What 1 Corinthians 13, where it says love is patient, love is kind, that's the results of love, not the definition of love. And I recommend anyone you really want to know if you're in love? Read 1 Corinthians 13. And I believe for my children, for my 3 daughters and my son, as they grow up and they meet someone of the opposite sex and truly believe they're in love, and say when my daughter has a young man say to her, I love you, how's a young man supposed to know what that believes? By going to a sex ed class, Planned Parenthood, reading a book? No. God intended for my daughter to know, if it's true that he loves her, is simply this. Does he treat me the same way my father treats my mother? See, that's one of the greatest responsibilities I have, is to give my daughters and my son a model of what it means for a man to love a woman. And as my son, who's been married now about 6 years, I think, 7 years, when he said to Stephanie, I love you, how does a young man know what that means? If he can say, I know I love her, but if I truly love her, then I would treat her the way my father treats my mother. And so, do you see my dad protecting and providing? Yes. Then that gives the model for me for protecting and providing.
Thank you.
Or here's another one, definition, come right along that. When the desire of your heart is to protect and provide for the security, health, and well-being of another, then you're in love. It's love. I believe in it because it's true. And when I became a Christian, I became committed to truth. And I struggle with that. I want what I teach to be true. It always isn't. But I want it to be. I want what I believe to be true. And truth is that which coincides or is the same as reality. And so, I mean, come on, it's obvious in history that on the 3rd day Christ was raised from the dead, that tomb was empty. Even the enemies of the church confirmed that. And so I believe in the resurrection first because I want to believe in truth. And the evidence historically, I wrote a whole book on it. In fact, I've written 2 books on it with the documentation of how I came to believe it is true historically. I believe there's as much, if not more, evidence, historical evidence for the resurrection than almost any other event in history. It's that strong. I believe it ought to be a law of the United Nations, the European Union, NAFTA, everything else, the World Church Assembly, whatever, that every family is required by law to adopt. We had the privilege of adopting our last child, Heather, when she was 25 days old. Her mother was 14 years old, got pregnant, and had Heather when she was 15, and chose us to raise her child. Oh, I am a better man. I'm a more loving, tender father because we had the privilege of adopting Heather. And you say, well, it's not quite the same as your own biological child. That is an absolute lie. You don't even think of any difference between, people would come up to us right in front of our children and say, oh, now which one of you, as if my daughter's Hispanic, but they say, which one is adopted? So I would go, what, this one? No. This one? No. And the people are going, wow, he must really be dumb. He doesn't even know which child's adopted. But my kids love it when I would do that. Yeah. They are your child. You were their parents. Well, if you say what I want to do, I want to go to the beach and sleep for 3 weeks. That's what, I live on the beach, and that's what I'd like to do. I pray that we will see within, not just America and Poland, but in so many cultures of the world, a true spiritual awakening, not revival. An awakening is where there's a resuscitation of the Spirit within a person, the Holy Spirit. But the difference with revival, it affects culture around them. And if the church does not have a true spiritual awakening in 10 years, in Poland, the United States, others, it'll be just like England, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, zero influence. Yeah. Too many kids are leaving the church right now. They don't want the faith of their parents because they really don't think their parents love each other and love Christ and live it out. And so I think a lot of it's going to depend, and maybe it'll come down to the leadership. Will the leadership wake up and start realizing they're ministering to a different culture and adjust to it? But here's the problem. Most people, whether a priest, a Protestant pastor, whatever, after about 40 years of age, aren't willing to change. They're too set in their ways. Well, always did it this way. This is the way I was taught to do it. And there is a legitimate fear in change. And as a result, even spiritual leaders do not, I believe, truly follow the calling of God and change. I'm not saying change truth or the gospel, no, but change the way you preach it, you live it, and you teach it, because we live in a different culture. That God became man, his name is Jesus, and he is passionate about a relationship with every person. That somehow as a result of it, it'll spark within parents a desire. This sounds horrible, but to get some of my books on how to build relationships and how to be a hero to your child and how to love your husband and relate to your children. Because you won't do it on your own. You won't. If you don't get help. I needed help. I never saw my father hug my mother, kiss my mother, ever say, I love you. I had to do it from watching others, and then the scriptures, and then good books. And so I would hope this would lead some into my books, because that's where the real teaching is.